Hi, I'm back. Okay. I'm going to give everybody a chance I think it should start coming through again. And I'm really hoping that it does not have such buffering issues. I moved to a different corner of the shop. So I'll give everyone just a chance so that I can see that, that y'all are all watching. I'll give y'all a chance. Okay. Is it better? I see that Kelly is back. Is it better? Is it buffering? I think the lighting's worse, but hopefully it's not buffering. Okay. Buffering issues. Is it buffering? All right, let's keep rolling. And the good thing is we just are really getting better. Seems better. Thank you, Luann. Great. Everyone says it seems better. It was worth the disruption. And this is the first time. And I thought about doing this on Zoom. I know a lot of people. I've done stuff on a good video to be able to easily put it on YouTube, which YouTube Live makes that very easy to do. But it's no reason we can't try a different platform next time. All right. It seems like everybody's joining back in. Thank you. So we're getting to the really fun part, which is, smelling. And what I was talking about is, don't feel, worried if you think I have a bad sense of smell or I don't have a great sense of smell, because it's very much a learned thing. And just all it requires is evaluating more wine. And I do think it also makes you just more aware of smell when you're cooking or, out walking. Everybody's out walking a lot at springtime. It's very nice. You're just very in touch with your senses because of wanting to come up with good descriptors. But smell, I will say this. This is a scientific fact that smell is 90% of taste is smell. Like I said earlier, if you could hear me through the buffering, is that I did lose my sense of smell once for 2 weeks, which was very scary. And it was a good diet because you really cannot taste anything. You're just getting texture out of, food, and you're not tasting anything. It's crazy. So yeah, when we are describing our things that we're tasting, a lot of that's coming from smell. Now, there are two types of smell. One is going to be just like we were just doing with wine 1 and 2, is just taking a little smell of it, and that is going to be called orthonasal, and that is just when we get from the nose. There's also retronasal smell, which retronasal smell comes from after we take a sip of the wine. So with these right now, with just smelling them, sorry, there's traffic. This is the reality these days with the door open. There's lots of loud motorcycles. But with these wines, we're right now focused on our orthonasal smell sense. So who could give me a descriptor? I'm hoping somebody can give me a descriptor for wine number 1. So your left-hand glass, you can maybe tell me a little bit about what do you initially get on the nose of this? And even if you could say whether you seem to get the very basics, I would say trying to distinguish between fruit and earth and thinking about there being this pendulum that's swinging between fruit and earth. And if very good, I'm liking this, that Kelly is letting me know that she got plum/cherry. Very good. Kate said, we messed up when we poured. Is the left the lighter one? They're both pretty light, but the left is the one on the right is actually more purple in color. Dennis says he gets some green notes out of wine number 1. So maybe some fresh herbs. That would not be unheard of. Also, I would say that Kate, going with, Dennis said plum. I was going to say go with, if you want to know which one we're focused on, if you mess up your glasses, I mean, I'd say Dennis and Misty and Kelly are all giving really good descriptors. Plum, cherry, cherry, some mineral, says Misty. Wine number one, I mean, to me, it's very much brimming with cherries. I mean, it might be kind of a black and red cherry quality. Also thinking about once so we're getting a lot of fruit descriptors. Obviously, it seems like this one's a little bit, that pendulum is a little bit more towards the fruit. We can also think about, is this ripe fruit? I'm not talking about the grapes being ripe. I mean, we are trusting really good winemakers to like Cliff just said, that Donna, Sue's mom, said the first one is cleaner tasting. They've already moved on to tasting, which is cool. Fine, like really ripe, ready to eat cherries. Delicious if you've ever had delicious Michigan cherries on the side of the road. Also, even honestly, to me on the nose, wine number one has a little bit of this cherry candy quality to it, like a Luden's cough drop, which is really candy, right? We have an abundance of candy around these days because it's a good. So wine number one, I think we could all agree that we have a few descriptors. Luann said bell pepper, a few things that are not fruit, but we're leaning towards fruit on this. And I talked about the fact that determining whether it seems more fruit or more earth. And the reason I bring this up is because this is very much a broad stereotype, but when we're stereotyping about wine, we'd say that old world wines, meaning all the wines from Europe, are going to be more earth-driven, and New World wines are more fruit-driven. So for me, this one is very much has this more fruit-driven quality. So just even on the nose, it's like, this is could be New World, but we'll see. Sometimes you get tricked. Sometimes it smells one way and tastes different on the palate. Now, wine number two, I'm sure y'all are already smelling and maybe tasting, but wine number two, to me, it's just all about the earth to me, in a good way. I bring up, and I always say this when I'm doing my blind tasting classes here, that if you can at least decide if you seem to be more of a New World fan or an Old World fan, and certainly you can be both. But, I think that's a good way to start describing what you like. And I mean, most people, when they're calling me, that's one of the first questions I'll ask, so are you more New World Pinot or Old World Pinot? But yeah, this one to me, it smells, wine number two, it smells like my garden. It smells like, damp garden soil to me. It does have smell, or walking through, a really nice, like damp forest. Yeah, Cliffwood said must. Yeah, that forest smell, that's totally what I get. Like a type of forest we don't have around here, like a type of forest you would find out on the West Coast. Or like, I guess in a forest here you would find it's like that decaying log. Misty, I like this. On number two, Misty says she gets licorice. I like that quality. Yeah, there is, like, I totally get that. It's anise or, fennel seed. So like actual natural licorice quality to it. So that's good. Y'all did really good, especially on, I think I'm happy that it seems like that we're getting over our technical difficulties. It was worth starting over. And, it makes me realize, too, I love the idea of doing this live and interacting with y'all. I think, what I'll do is do another one, just me talking, so that you can watch a really polished version as well. And that way we don't have to have technical difficulties. So moving on, I know hopefully maybe some of y'all are already tasting. And, I did have one person reach out, and he was asking earlier in the day, like, what should we be eating while we're tasting these wines? And I was like, that's a great question. I should have addressed that. I think definitely having something on hand, especially with red wines, to be having a little nibble of. Because red wines, they need something. And we're going to get into one of the scientific reasons behind that. So now we're moving on to the taste, aka palate. Kate says that 100% Lance asked that. It was not Lance, but it was actually another person that I know really likes to eat that asked about pairing. So I think anything salty, if you even have some nuts right handy and it's a good way to cleanse your palate. But on taste, aka palate, if you're looking at your sheet, it says sweetness, tannin, acid, body, fruit, and length. Well, let's talk about, I have sweetness right there at the top. What does that mean? It's funny because in us wine nerds, we get used to talking about sweetness. And if I was doing this, like for a test, like the first thing I would say was the wine is dry when I taste it. If I tasted this wine number 1, which it is dry. Now, that is because in wine nerd talk, when we say a wine is dry, we mean it does not have any residual sugar in it. Now, dryness in consumer speak is different because I have people all the time that say that they love like a really dry red wine. And what they are saying is that they love a red wine that really dries their mouth out. And that is referring to the next item on your list, which is tannin. So tannin in wine, it's a very scientific thing. It comes from the grape skin, stems, and seeds. And this is where we're going back to thinking about the thinness and thickness of the grape skins. So thin-skinned grapes will have less tannin. Thick-skinned grapes will have more tannin. And the tannin actually latches onto the protein in your saliva and literally dries your mouth out and leads you to feel, I always say your teeth feel like they're wearing sweaters, which I think I stole that from some master som at some course I went to. But that is, an easy way to think about it. When your teeth feels like they're wearing sweaters, that's more tannin. When your mouth doesn't feel as dry, that's less tannin. So if we go back to what I was talking about, most famous thin-skinned grape, Pinot Noir, I think we can all agree that's kind of what we describe as like a lighter red wine, meaning has silkier tannins. It doesn't dry your mouth out as much. So wine number 1, let's take a sip of it. I mean, y'all probably already have. I see things coming in. But I'm going to take my first sip right now of it, and I'm going to think about the tannins, whether it's drying my mouth out. I'm also going to think about the acidity. Acidity is very scientific as well. And Cliff says, wow, you're really teaching tonight. Thanks. Yeah, I can't not teach. I can't do this without teaching. But the acidity is very scientific. Your body really has a physical reaction to it as well. And it causes your mouth to water because your mouth's like, there's, this really acidic solution in here. I need to neutralize it. I'm going to create saliva. Okay, so I'm going to take my first sip and I'm going to think about the tannins and about the acid. And all red wine's going to have some tannin. It does spend time on the skins. Unlike a white wine, we taste it. It doesn't hardly have any tannin. I mean, it's unusual. Now, I see people saying that low tannins on number 1. I already had Kelly and Tracy have said low tannins on number 1. I think it can be a little tricky if, I'm actually don't have anything I'm snacking on here, sadly. If you aren't eating anything. And it's also, if you haven't tasted number 2, it's hard to have this, gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and actually take a sip of number 2 as well and see about the tannins comparatively. It's easier to have a comparison. I mean, you feel that? That grippiness. I mean, it's like cotton balls in your mouth. Wine number 2 has some tannins, which can be surprising, to you since you saw this light concentration. They both have that concentration of color, very similar concentration of color. But wine number 2 is way more tannic. We're going to also continue to talk about, and Tracy said, I guess I always compare tannins on a red to a rich cab. Yeah. I mean, Cab is like an extreme example. So I talked about the most famous thin-skinned grapes would be Pinot Noir and Gamay. Most famous thick-skinned grapes would be the entire Bordeaux family of grapes, which would be Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, all these grapes that are from Bordeaux. They're most famously associated with Bordeaux. We see them elsewhere in the world. But there's also things that are more in the middle. And there's also, like I had mentioned, those famous Italian grapes, Nebbiolo and Sangiovese, that have a light concentration of color, but they have relatively high tannins. So we always have to keep those in mind. And also knowing that those grapes, like Nebbiolo and Sangiovese, they have high tannins, but they're a silkier tannin than Cab. I mean, Cab is like the most extreme example of intense tannins. So is everyone, I know Misty said medium tannins on number 2. What does everybody else think about the tannins on number 2? Would y'all agree with me that they're pretty high? And also I was going to say the other thing, is we're basically going back to like our fruit versus earth call, and we're like confirming or denying the fruit versus earth. And so thinking about this, number 1, is it taste as fruity as it smelled? Number 2, does it taste as earthy as it smelled? Yeah, Kelly also agrees. Much more tannins on number 2. So what about the flavors? Yeah, Dennis had pretty high tannins. Misty, number 2 is high. Number 1 is medium. Yeah. Tracy, she says there's more tannins on number 2, but it doesn't seem as strong as a Cab. Very good. I would agree. Now let's think about the number 1. Spend a little bit more time with it. Does it still seem as fruity as we first thought? And what do you think about the acidity on it? Is your mouth watering? Cliff said the cotton ball comparison really popped when doing the mouth swish. Well, with number 1, what I'm finding, it still is all about this very pretty red fruit to me. There's certainly some earth in the background, but lots of, Dennis said, not super fruity, lots of acid. There's lots of acid. And I wanted to bring up the acid thing. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, we talked about the science of how the acid, works, with your body. But why do we care? Why do we care that there's acid? Well, first of all, I think that acidity is one of the most valuable characteristics in a wine. It cuts through the richness of food. The way that it makes your mouth water makes you want to come back to it, which is a good thing, right? But also it is pointing, for us wine nerds, it's pointing towards the climate that the grapes were grown in. So the very basic science of grape growing is that when grapes are on the vine, I mean, they're a fruit, they're ripening, and as they ripen, they develop sugars. As the sugars go up, the acidity levels, the natural acidity goes down. It's this inverse relationship. So if we're in a really warm climate, the grapes they're just happy, have this high metabolic activity, and increase their sugar, and acidity just drops. So we're talking about somewhere really warm, say Central Valley, California, where a lot of cheap grocery store wine comes from. I mean, we're going to end up with a wine that has high sugar. That sugar will be fermented into alcohol, but we're still going to get that ripe, fruit characteristic. The acidity will be low. So that's why really great wine regions, they usually have some degree of shift in temperature during the day. So even Napa, which we think of as being probably a warm region, I mean, it does get quite warm there in the summer, but you actually, even in the summer there, could use a sweater at night, and that preserves that acidity in the wine. And that's what makes it world-class wine region, and these are wines that have really good ageability to them, because the acidity is a great characteristic for aging a wine. For an age-worthy wine, tannins and acidity are good. Makes wine stand up to the test of time. So with this one, with wine number 1, I am getting, like we said, it's fruity on the nose, less fruity on the palate, but I still get a good amount of fruit. It has really good acidity. I mean, it's pointing towards it being, we already looked at it and can tell it's probably a thin-skinned grape. That acidity makes me think that it's from a cool climate. And then there's, just a little more fruit on the nose. So, I mean, that's what we're doing here. We're building our case. I already mentioned, that the Pinot Noir and Gamay are the most famous thin-skinned grapes. So we're like, maybe this could be, they're low in tannin. This could maybe be Pinot or Gamay. The question is whether it's New World or Old World. And that fruit quality is making me think New World on it. But I'll be interested to hear what y'all are thinking about it. And anybody want to chime in and tell me? Cliff, guessing New World and or Gamay on number one. So I'm guessing, New World, Pinot, or Misty says not Gamay. Tell us, Misty's been working with us a lot on her blind tasting, not to call her out, but she's in the industry. Why are you thinking not Gamay, Misty? I do agree with you. I think there's some things that would make it seem. And Dennis is like, Pinot, New World. I'm loving this. Y'all are really telling me some stuff. Very good. Misty's answering. Gamay usually has that bubblegum scent. So for those of y'all that may not be as familiar with Gamay, we do find New World Gamay, but you wouldn't do that in a blind tasting. It's delicious, but it just wouldn't be fair. I mean, if you're going to have Gamay in like a blind tasting like this, which is, kind of centered around this Court of Master Sommelier standards, we would be talking about Gamay from the Beaujolais region of France. And, this Beaujolais, I say Beaujolais and people immediately might think of Beaujolais Nouveau, which is one thing, but there's a really great, age-worthy wine from Beaujolais. But almost all of it does have a little bit of this technique called carbonic maceration, which is like going down the rabbit hole too far, but just a real quick thing. Carbonic maceration is a fermentation technique, and it ends up with this bubble gum scent. We're not getting any of that. I mean, this wine is just very much about prettiness to me, about flowers, very floral on the nose. I don't think I mentioned that at the beginning. And red fruit, and then it has that earthy backbone on the palate, which is still possible in the New World. Now, number two, let's spend a little bit more time with number two on the palate. All right. Number two, I like Cliff says, oh, didn't know the bubblegum thing. So number two on the palate, once again, those tannin saliva, you can imagine how they're building. But tannins building, sucking your mouth dry, like I could really use a piece of charcuterie right now. But what are you getting fruit-wise on the palate? Or is it just all about the earth on the palate on number two? Thoughts on number two? Anybody have some descriptors? Y'all are so descriptive on number one. I'd love to have some all about, Misty says all about the earth on number two. Yeah. I mean, I think, we got it on the nose, but now on the palate. Dennis is saying tobacco. Tracy saying dark fruit. Yeah, I agree with all these things. Kelly, yes, tobacco. Yeah, because it kind of has this sweet, not like sugar theme, but like the really nice, like, cigar forest and like even a, decomposing log, So let's talk about what we have, our facts. We're building the facts on this. So building our case for it. And Tracy said not spicy. I like that. I want to address that in just a second. So with number two, we saw it had a light concentration of color, which could mean a thin-skinned grape variety. But then we tasted it, and it had all these tannins. And so if you remember, I said there are these two Italian varieties that lose their color really quickly. It's just a natural scientific thing that happens with them. And but they still have tannins from those thick skins. Those two grapes were Nebbiolo from the Piedmont and Sangiovese from Tuscany. I'm repeating it because especially I think that was when we were having all the buffering issues. So yeah, Nebbiolo, Sangiovese. There's also, I mean, Syrah can sometimes, I feel like Syrah usually has a deeper color than this. Syrah can kind of be along these lines with the tannins, where Syrah is not as tannic as Cab, but like a Northern Rhone Syrah can have this level of tannins. But it's this lighter concentration of color that's really taking me to those two Italian grapes, Nebbiolo or Sangiovese. And who here in this group, you might hear drink Nebbiolo and Sangiovese on a regular basis, which would be amazing. And I think it's tricky telling the difference between those two grapes. Nebbiolo is going to be, we'll find that most famously in Barolo and Barbaresco, which I mean can get pricey. There is Langhe Nebbiolo, which is the broader region. Yeah, Kate's like, I drink those too, but it's hard to get the difference right. But yeah, with Misty saying yes too, the difference is hard. So Nebbiolo to me has like more of an elegance to it than Sangiovese can have. Even the best Sangiovese seems a little bit more rustic. Kelly's saying Sangiovese here. So Kelly, do you think it's Sangiovese, or you're saying you drink a good amount of Sangiovese? And is anybody, was anybody going in this direction? Was anybody already thinking? Well, Syrah just would have, first of all, it just have more color. It's amazing how much you can tell that from the color. And that's why I say that's like the nerdiest portion of this. But, I actually once had in this course I took with a Master Somm where he actually made us make calls based just on the side of the wine. And I mean, you can actually, because you don't start tricking yourself. I mean, that's the thing. You can trick yourself. It's like people that go out and play golf and haven't played in a long time and they do the best. I mean, it's like almost like the more that you know, the more you trick yourself. So I'm biting for time here so I can hear what people are saying. Kelly's like, I drink Sangiovese. I think it might be Sangiovese. Misty, I was thinking an Italian grape on two. And Kate, Zach, and I are leaning Sangiovese. Okay. So, I mean, we've gotten a lot of great feedback here. I would also say there's a couple of things that I didn't get to touch on that I usually do touch on, but they just didn't really come up with these because actually they're both not present as much in these. So one would be spice. I think that it was Tracy brought up spice. Sorry, a lot of talking here. I wish y'all were here to talk with me. But oak aging in a wine, we could use, so with wine, we can age it in stainless steel and not have any oak characteristic. We could age it in large old oak barrels and have only the oxygen affecting it. Or we could use new small French oak barrels and have it really have a major effect. And with those, with those smaller barrels and new oak, we would get a lot of that in this in the wine. And the thing is, though, about oak is that new oak barrels are very expensive. One new French oak barrel costs about $1,100. And anyone that's been to any winery, you see how many barrels there are. You can imagine the investment. You also all know that, y'all got these two wines for $40. So probably not a ton of new oak going on here. And I'm not getting it, being anything like, dominating these wines. But I always like to bring it up because it's something that can be an indicator as well. If there being money spent on the wine, there's just certain wines that you're more likely to see oak on, like a Napa Cab. Also, I wanted to bring up the other thing we didn't get the chance to talk about was alcohol. Getting really an alcoholic burn on either of these. And alcohol is going to, higher alcohol would be pointing towards a warmer climate. And if we go back to what I was saying, about grapes when they're on the vine being these sugar factories, and then eventually that sugar being turned into alcohol. So a warmer climate would produce a wine with with higher alcohol. That's the basics of that. Dennis is also saying, I don't drink much Italian, but I'm thinking Sangiovese. Before I reveal these, so what they are, I mean, we've kind of led you to what they are, but I like to like ask, and I do this in class here. Hopefully some of y'all can respond and tell me which was your favorite. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, honestly, that's the most important thing. And it could be that one's a favorite. Thoughts, which was your favorite, maybe why it was your favorite. That would be super helpful. So I'll give y'all a second to think about that. And then we're going to get into our final conclusion. And Misty said she thinks that 2 has some age on it. Kate saying she likes them both, but 2 is my favorite. Ready for a big bowl of pasta to go with it. Hey, me too. I'm ready. Tracy, hard to pick. Depends on what I'm doing eating. Yes. Kelly, number 1 is the favorite. Light and fruity. Yeah. I mean, I'm like all about it being depending on your mood. For me right now, actually, number 1 would probably be, I always find during stressful times that I just want to drink like really pretty New World Pinot because it's like cheery and cheers you up. Cliff, well, if I had thought to order an EO charcuterie plate, then 2 all day. Anna saying number 2 for the win. Dennis likes both, depends on what I'm eating also. Probably number 1 for casual drinking. Yeah. Number 1 is the easy drinking favorite. Cliff Woods, with Triscuits, number 1 works just fine. Yeah, number 2 needs that food. And that's the tannin is when you start to need food because it's drying your mouth out. I mean, it's like asking, please give me some food. So number 1, ready for the reveal. And actually, it's amazing that even with our technical difficulties and stuff that we write on an hour, which here, we do these all the time. And, or we used to do them all the time here, and in a variety of fashions. And it's always about an hour. I mean, if we're doing like a class setting like this. And yeah, so it's just funny. It was like right on an hour again. So number 1, is everyone thinking that it's New World Pinot? Misty saying 1 is Pinot from France. I think there were some people that were kind of on the New World Pinot train. Yep. So you're getting some yeses. Okay, I'm going to reveal it. And I think that, it ends up showing you in reverse. So I'll just tell you. Oh, Dennis says yes, Pinot, Oregon. Dennis is winning. Dennis, thank you. You're winning. Even in reverse, you might be able to read. It is Sass. Oregon Pinot. This is from Willamette Valley, 2017. Says the current vintage on this alcohol is 13.6%, which is that's moderate alcohol. Wine doesn't have such a range of alcohol like beer does. I mean, you can find beer with alcohol from 4% to 18%. I mean, those are very extreme examples, but here, I like Misty's. Dang it, Dennis! Great job. Yeah. Dennis is like, I've had this. This is classic. I love Jerry Sass. I mean, he is actually, when I first was getting into wine, when back when I had my own restaurant and did a lot of other things than just wine, I got to know Jerry and did a wine dinner with him. And especially this vintage is quintessential Oregon Pinot to me. It has that acidity that's pointing towards it's New World fruitiness, but a little bit of a cooler climate. I mean, Oregon's had some very warm vintages lately, so there's sometimes they get some alcohol, but this is like a perfect Oregon vintage. And it's got a little bit of new French oak on it, but not much. And yeah, now we're getting to number 2. Yeah, I love that Anna is saying Jerry Sass is great. He's just such a nice guy. I can't say enough good things about him. His Chardonnay is awesome too, and like super well priced for Oregon Chardonnay. The Sass on the shelf, I gave y'all a little bit of a deal. Sass on the shelf, the Pinot is $25, but his Chardonnay is like $19. And we also, I have Tracy had said that she had crystals on one of her corks. Crystals, you're more likely to kind of notice them in white wine a lot of the time. It's the tartaric acid. It is just when you're making a more natural wine and don't maybe go through cold stabilization that you'll end up with those. They're a normal thing. Sometimes, I think because we know about cork taint, we get a little obsessed with like what's going on with the cork. I was doing a Zoom tasting with a customer last week, and there was a little bit of mold on the top of his cork, and I was glad he brought it back, and I was like Coravanned it to make sure it was okay, and it was fine. I mean, we are talking about things fine, and a little bit of mold might be fine, and you would definitely know if it was really badly corked. But let's move on to number 2. Okay, so I think that everyone, I already took y'all to the Italian path, whether it was Sangiovese or Nebbiolo. It is going to be Sangiovese from Chianti Colli Senese, which is a subregion in Chianti Classico. And Kate said she thought it could be Chateauneuf du Pape until you talked through it. So reasons why this would not be Chateauneuf, it would be, it would not have been available for, $20. But also, so Chateauneuf du Pape is a region in the Southern Rhone that's mostly Grenache, which actually Grenache it also has a light concentration of color, which should take you to this, and that dry, earthy quality. But Grenache it takes a long time to ripen, so it ends up being higher in alcohol. So it's definitely one of the most like rich old world wines, which is why I think a lot of people like Chateauneuf. And also Grenache loses its acidity. It's naturally low in acid grape. So I think the acidity in this can take us to Nebbiolo or Sangiovese, and yet 13.5% alcohol. This is from Montanandoli. This lady Elisabetta. Oh, Kate said, sorry, that was for wine number 1. But Elisabetta Montanandoli, she is I unfortunately did not get to meet her. She was in Charleston a couple years ago. And she's in her 80s and still traveling, working the market, and just this old school Tuscan producer. And she's really famous for her white wine from it's Vernaccia di San Gimignano. But I love her reds too. I thought it would be fun to taste this. Her Chianti. I love her Toscano Rosso is great as well. And it's $20. Terrific little bottle of wine. It doesn't see. This is definitely a kind of an entry level Chianti, and it actually doesn't see any oak at all. It's aged in tank with more serious Sangiovese. You'll see some time in barrel. And a little bit more of that barrel influence. I think that's why this one was showing so purple, is because it didn't see any time in barrel. But I do think this is a great little wine for $20. Kate said that she loves number 2 even more now. Yeah, the story behind it, and there's even a longer story where Elisabetta and her husband, they created this farm and adopted all these children and lived off the farm. And it's a great story. Look it up and read about it. But that kind of wraps it up. And like I said, I'm not going to keep y'all here all night. And Colin's probably ready for me to start helping him with the rest of the day's duties. But it's definitely a trying time for everyone, for sure. I think literally everyone, even if it's just that you're bored at home. The bright spot for us is getting to have so much, even though we don't have interaction here at the store, getting to email with people, talk to people on the phone, feel like that we, are bringing a little bit of happiness, hopefully, to people through good wine. I know that for me, the ability to have a glass of wine and to really connect with the place that it's from and the winemaker is what, just kind of keeps me sane during all this. And it's that's why I love wine. And, just to I think during times like this, we appreciate the little moments of gathering at the table even more and, enjoying a nice glass of wine together. I'm waving because Scott's actually on another video. We're having simultaneous video chatting.
Let's see what's happening.
And here's Scott on a beer video.
So say hi to Tegan and Amanda. Hawthorne Bottle Shop.
Yeah, they're ladies with a really awesome bottle shop down in Florida. They're doing their own video chat with Scott.
Sorry for crashing yours. I apologize.
We're just wrapping up. Sue's asking why the barrel changes the color of the wine. Yeah, so that's a great question, Sue. So you can imagine versus being in a stainless steel tank, zero oxygen affecting it. In a barrel, there's oxygen affecting it. So it has that oxidative effect, what affects the color of the wine, but also has a slight flavor, effect as well. And the easiest way to remember that is about the oxygen is in affecting the color is think about what if we just cut up an apple and left it out on the counter, what would happen? It would brown. I'm glad you all enjoyed this so much. I mean, I definitely was thinking about doing something else, but I thought we might switch it up and do another class. And look, here's Colin. Everybody say hey to Colin. We might do like a different kind of class, but if y'all like blind tasting, I mean, now we wouldn't have to go through every last little step, and we can kind of get through it faster. But thank y'all again. I really, really appreciate it. And everybody's saying hi to Colin. I just hope everybody's staying safe and staying strong. And, I think the main thing is just taking this, day by day. And like I said, appreciating the little things. And we certainly all appreciate y'all so much. And yeah, I'll be in touch with more fun ideas for online entertainment. And hopefully let me know if it seemed like the buffering issues stopped. But I would be interested to hear from y'all if the buffering issue went away once I started it again. But I'm glad we did that. There's nothing worse than bad buffering. All right. Well, cheers, everybody. Bye. Thank you.